You know when you want to watch an episode, not a show or a film, but when you think of a certain episode of a show and think, I want to watch that episode. Well, for some reason ever since I said I was going to do the early Friendship is Magic episodes, I've been wanting to review Spike at Your Service. I don't know why, it never really stood out to me when I first watched the show, and it still doesn't really stand out. Anyway, this episode begins after Celestia sent 12 books to Twilight. If she sent those via Spike, that must have been hell for him. Twilight says she's got to read them over the weekend, which I don't think Celestia told her to do. So she excuses Spike, allowing him to do his own things. After the opening, Spike sees the hot air balloon and decides to go for a ride, but ends up setting it free. He chases after the balloon all the way to the Everfree Forest. If a tree falls in the Everfree Forest, does it make a sound? And by that I mean Spike finds some Timberwolves that only ever appear here and in a parallel dimension where Nightmare Moon has defeated Celestia. Although, couldn't he use his fire breath on them? I mean, I know it was a few years later, but he used his fire breath on the Storm King's goons. Wait, did Applejack just kill those Timberwolves?
That was amazing! I mean, you rocketed those boulders at them like they were rockets! Pow, 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 pow! You saved my life! You saved my life.
Does Spike now have a crush on Applejack? Spike follows Applejack back to Sweet Apple Acres and insists on helping her out on the farm.
Pies! Pies! I'm helping Applejack make some pies!
Doesn't he do those things for Twilight? Now we're expected to believe that he's bad at cleaning and cooking when he, supposedly, does it all the time.
You saved my life! According to the Spike the Dragon Code, I owe you a life debt and must serve you.
So basically, Applejack is stuck with Spike, like Qui-Gon Jinn was stuck with Jar Jar. That was the worst part of Phantom Menace.
I just can't cotton with you permanently serving me. Please, Applejack, my Dragon Code is a part of me. I have to be true to myself.
Was one of those books Celestia sent to Twilight 50 Shades of Grey? Speaking of S&M, they take some pie to Rarity to give her a taste.
I saved Spike from some Timberwolves in the Everfree Forest, and now he thinks he has to serve me forever.
Oh, what I wouldn't give to have some pony forever in my debt. I'd get him to organize my closets and give me pedicures.
Thus proving Rarity is a dominatrix. Applejack, on the other hand, is rather more vanilla. I mean, she isn't too keen on having someone helping her, or acting as her personal slave. So her and the main six come up with a plan to get Spike to save her.
And you wanna shoot you out of a cannon towards a hornet's nest and give Spike a butterfly net so we can catch you mere seconds before we hit the nest and are stung by 1,000 angry hornets! I'll wear this mustache.
Wait, this is where Pinky with a mustache came from? Well, Applejack has a less random plan. She'll have Spike save her from Timberwolves. Wouldn't that be really dangerous?
When I give the signal, Pinkie Pie and Rarity will come running out of the woods, being pursued by the Timberwolf. I'll start to run too, but then pretend to get my hoof stuck. I'll ask Spike to help me dislodge it, and he will, and I'll be able to get away from the terrifying Timberwolf.
Spike then arrives and the main six put their plan into motion with a puppet Timberwolf. But they end up attracting real Timberwolves. Although you can tell that they're CGI as opposed to the flash sprites the ponies use. Couple of points. First of all, the black outlines. Most characters in the show use a darker shade of their body colour, not black. Second, the pieces of wood are made of straight lines as opposed to the curves everything else uses. Third, and biggest point of all, the Timberwolves have a greater range of movement. When you watch scenes over and over, you start to notice that the ponies move in angles as their sprites change. Straight on, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 135, 180 and then back around. Whereas, because the Timberwolves are 3D, they have more fluid movement. Unfortunately, all that makes them look out of place in this episode. Even when there aren't ponies next to them for reference, we know how things should look in the show. So their differences aren't unnoticeable. Now that's a sprite. And Applejack really does have her hoof stuck this time. Spike throws a rock into the big Timberwolf's mouth, and uses one of the sticks that come off it as it chokes to free Applejack's hoof. Okay, now it's dead. What's the kill count of this show? Sombra? This Timberwolf? Maybe the Dazzlings? We never did hear what happened to them?
My hoof was stuck, and that Timberwolf was coming right at me. But Spike picked up a pebble and rocketed that thing right at the huge Timberwolf's mouth, and saved my life.
With his life debt paid to Applejack, Spike goes back to being his old submissive self for Twilight. And that's Spike at your service. If you were ever to say an episode was nothing, then this episode is the closest to nothing. We don't really see any of the characters learn anything, nor do we learn anything about dragons. Spike's dragon code only appears in this episode. It would have been cool if, when other dragons appeared, they could have had a dragon code similar to the Klingon Code of Honor, that told them what they could and could not do, or should and should not. Which, given how rogue dragons are, could have worked as how they keep stability among themselves, even answering the call of the Dragon Lord. I mean, in Gauntlet of Fire, why do the dragons arrive? Sure, they were selecting who would succeed as Dragon Lord, but if there's no unified code or honour among dragons, then why would they appear? They could have just skipped the whole thing and stole from their fellow dragons who did answer. I don't know. This episode feels like a mix of missed opportunities, both afterwards but also in the episode itself. Because Spike is usually eager to help other people, but often with very little independence. Whereas Applejack is very independent, but doesn't like to be helped. So this episode could have worked to teach them both to find a middle ground. As it is, it's more of a fun caper with very little in terms of lessons. Which isn't bad, it just makes it unremarkable.